Hi YouTubers, welcome to my page. This is the Candy's page. If you like my content, please kindly do subscribe, like, and put the bell so that if I post anything, you're the first to know. Today we'll be talking about one of the youngest South African murderers, which was well known as the Scissor murderers. Her name was Marlene van Linden. So Marlene van Linden in 1974 orchestrated the death of Mrs. Susan van Linden, which was by then her boyfriend's wife, Mr. Christian van Linden. The affair roughly began in 1973. It started as a father kind of relationship daughter, and then it later moved to being a romantic affair. So let's get into the news and let me not waste your data. Marlene, just a bit of background on who Marlene is and what happened to her. Marlene was born on the 15th of October 1955 and died on the 7th of October 2015. She was a South African murderer or murderess, well known as the Scissor Murderess. In February 1972, Lehnberg began her first job as a clerical assistant at the Red Cross Hospital in Rondebosch, Cape Town. She was from Cape Town. She started to work in the orthopedic workshop alongside Christian van Linden, whom by then was the workshop chief technician. Lehnberg, a very bright, beautiful, attractive 16-year-old, was apparently drawn to Mr. van Linden from day one, and nothing was just going to stop in her way to get what she wanted. Mind you, Lehnberg's upbringing was both ultra-conservative and strict. Her father was that kind of father that does not show affection to any of her daughters. It was a very strict straight father-daughter relationship. Then, she was not much of a socialite, because you can understand, coming from a strict background, even when she was in cinema, she didn't even have the opportunity to actually, in high school, she didn't have the opportunity to actually go to a cinema. So until after high school, she didn't really know what a cinema was. So during her high school, she was a very intelligent and always came out first in class. You would understand the time that she had in her hands. The only thing that she could actually do is show herself or prove herself through her books, and had no experience with men or boys whatsoever. She was drawn to Christian van Linden from day one. She said, with her own words, open quote, welcome, and her heart beated faster, close quote. She initially said that Mr. Christian was more of a father. He was warm and he was friendly. By then, mind you, Mr. Christian was 47 years old. This was in 1972, and she was only 18 years old. So the two became as a father-daughter relationship. However, in 1972, the relationship became romantic. This was in April 1973. They became closer and they became romantic. Throughout the remainder of 1973, Lehnberg and van Linden continued to meet in secret at Rondebosch Common and Powden A London, which is in Cape Town. Then early 1974, their intimacy stopped because Mr. van Linden, which is Christian, said, my wife has been getting, which is Susan, has been getting calls anonymously. So I would suggest that we stop this. She's starting to fish out what is going on. Despite the fact that Christian had declared that he would never leave his wife and family, Lehnberg was convinced that the only obstacle standing between him and her and the relationship becoming permanent and everybody to know about it and them getting married was the wife, which was Susan. Susanna. By 1974, Lehnberg was becoming desperate and started talking about leaving Cape Town. This was a threat to Christian to see how he would react to the whole situation. But Christian persuaded her not to, because of course he loves the girl, and by September she had been finally tired of the situation and decided to confront Susanna. You can just imagine being the side chick for that long. It gets irritating at one point. Lehnberg called and explained to Susanna that me and your husband are in a relationship. We love one another. I'm not going anywhere. So but Susanna wouldn't take any of that. She then called Susanna and said, "Can we meet up?" Susanna agreed, and they met up. This was a few weeks later. This time she made an appointment to go and see her. They met in Belleville early in October. Initially, Lehnberg had hoped that Susanna van Linde could come to some sort of agreement concerning Christian, which would be divorcing him because of they were not in love or something. Not only did Susanna tell Van Leeuwen that she would never give her husband a divorce because of the children, she added she doesn't mind playing the game. As long as she doesn't mind playing it, they could be together, so they could do a polygamous situation and she'd be fine with it. Well, but Marlene was not taking it. Marlene was not taking it. She wanted Christian all to herself, yet Susanna was not going to just give up on her husband like that. Time went by. It was around the time that Lehnberg met Martinez Charles Chugu. So Charles is the conspirator that Marlene worked with to kill Susanna. He had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident and had come to the orthopedic workshop to actually fit a new leg. He was unemployed, and his disabilities, both physically and socially, had destroyed his self-esteem, and he just didn't want anything. This made him particularly susceptible to Lehnberg approaches. Lehnberg first contacted Chugu, which was Charles, by letter, which she wrote to him, and took it straight to the store that Chugu actually had owned, which was Solly's Trading Store, his local shop. And in the letter, she had asked him to come to the orthopedic center, adding that if he was clever, he could still earn good money. You can just imagine this guy had just went through this whole ordeal. His self-esteem is low, and he doesn't have a job, so he needs a job. Why not actually think about it? When he arrived at the workshop, Lehnberg gave him 1 rand, which was, I'm sure, 1,000 rands by then, and asked him to meet her at the Rondebosch Town Hall at 7 p.m. that night, at which she gave him a bottle of gin and said that she wanted him to murder a woman for her, which we all know that it's Susanna. Charles first declined, saying that he was afraid of being sent to the gallows. Gallows, the Satan world, etc. After some discussion, Charles finally agreed to Marlene's request. Several days later, he went to the address in Princeton, Belleville, which Marlene had given him, later claiming that he planned to warn Susanna, to warn her that her life was in danger. But instead of the warning, Susanna went up. Instead of warning Susanna, he actually went on with Marlene's ordeal, which was to kill Susanna for her to actually get the husband. He simply asked her for money, and he said he didn't have any, and went back inside the house. This was when he first initially got there. But then, a week later, Charles and Marlene met up in Rondebosch once more. This time, he admitted that he was too afraid to go through with the murder. You can just imagine. Lehnberg gave him a radio and promised that she would help him to receive an artificial limb if he did away with Susanna, which was Christian's wife. We understand the motive of why Marlene would want Susanna out of the picture. Charles went to Belleville again, but on this occasion, he simply walked past the house and made no attempt to enter. That's how scared he was of actually going in. Shortly after that, Marlene sent Charles a second letter, again arguing him to go through with the murder using the knife if he had to. She got another message to him asking him to telephone her at work. During the subsequent conversation, Marlene insisted that Charles go through with the murder. She promised that he would give him a car and have sex with him after the whole deal has been done. So you can just imagine how desperate she is to get Susanna out of her life. She wants, She wants, what's his name? He wants Mr. van Linde, Christian, and she would do anything to get Christian in her arms. In October 1974, Marlene handed in her notice at the hospital and told Christian that she was going to leave Cape Town. On the 24th of October, Marlene collected Charles from his home in the retreat and drove him to Belleville in her car to ensure that this murder is done. He was armed with a hammer, which was used to kill Susanna. Marlene dropped him off at the vicinity of Boston and sped away so that she is not incarcerated for this, she's not connected to this. That's how evil women can be. She was alarmed because she had seen him in the area one more occasion. She telephoned Belleville. She telephoned the Belleville police station, and Charles was picked up by the police about 2 blocks from her house because Susanna had seen this, and he had seen this guy snooping around, and she was kind of uncomfortable with the whole situation. At the police station, he was beaten and warned not to return to the area. In the face of repeated failure, Marlene decided to take matters into her own hands. And a few days later, after Charles' attempt failed, Marlene approached Rob Newman, which was a 24-year-old engineering student whom she knew, and asked to borrow his Lala pistol. When he refused, she asked if she could kill someone for her, and he refused. But on the 28th of October, Newman's pistol was stolen all of a sudden from his room. He reported the theft to the police and suggested that Marlene was likely the suspect, following the idea that she was initially asking for the gun. So it's more or less a given that she would have been the one to take it. Around 8:30 a.m. in the morning of Monday, the 4th of November, 1974, Marlene arrived at Charles' home. She said that her car was parked and she was on her way to Johannesburg. But before she left, she needed Charles to come with her to Susanna's house. He claimed in the statement that it wasn't until she handed him the pistol on the way to Belleville that he knew that she wasn't just going to say goodbye. There was a motive behind the whole situation. They arrived outside Susanna's house at around 9 a.m. Susanna was alone inside. From the point on where Charles and Marlene's account of what followed would be to differ. However, the different accounts are: Marlene claims that she got out of the car, rang the doorbell, and returned to the car while Charles entered the house and committed the murder. However, Mr. Charles says he maintains that they acted together throughout. He says that, and you can understand that Charles' statement is supported by the neighbor, which saw what was actually going on. Miss Marius says on the morning in question, Marius had walked past Lehnberg's white, which was Marlene's white Ford Anglia, twice in the space of 10 to 12 minutes, while it was parked opposite Susanna's house on both occasions. The car was empty, so there is no way that Marlene was left in the car. Charles said that after Marlene rang the bell, they both went into the house together. When Susanne saw them both, she became frightened and threatened to call the police. She attempted to get away but was tripped by Marlene. She fell, hit her head on the door while Susanna was on the floor. Marlene struck her jaw with the butt of the pistol, making her unconscious by that time. On Marlene's instruction, Charles began to throttle the semi-conscious Susanna. Then Marlene then gave him a pair of scissors she had taken from the sideboard. Charles said he remembers stabbing Susanna 3 times, but the pathologist later noted that she had 7 stab wounds. So they had a chance to actually go back and say, no, what we're doing is wrong. So it was more or less premeditated from what I think, which 6 of which had penetrated the chest, and I would suggest one was a bit lighter than all. After the murder, Marlene squirted green dye over Charles using a gas pistol. Susanna had asked her husband to buy her after she had seen Charles in their neighborhood. After warning Charles that she would deny any involvement in the murder if he went to the police, Marlene took him home, set off for Johannesburg, collecting 2 speed tickets at Beaufort West on the journey to create some sort of ally. When the police... So welcome again. At the time that Miss Marlene collected all these tickets, she was trying to, put on her ally. So that I was on my way to Joburg. What is talking about anyway? So, however, Susanna was discovered by her daughter when she went to go and actually see her mother. And the funny part about the story is Anthony or Martinez kept the pistons, and when he was questioned by the police why he didn't throw them away, he simply said that if he would have thrown them away, there was a higher chance of him being caught, because at that point in time I would presume that it was easy traceable. But then the police found the pistons with him when they went to do the arrest. So Susanna's body was discovered at 1 p.m., as I said before, by her daughter, and her daughter attempted to phone her mother, Van Linda, which was, what's his name, Christian, tried to call his wife a couple of times at work, and he was not getting through, and eventually became concerned that there was no reply. He spoke to his daughter Zelda and said, Zelda, maybe please kindly go and check your mom, which she was not that far, which was in Tygerberg Hospital. And during her lunch break, she sneaked away and went to see if there was anything wrong with her mom. When she arrived, The home, the house was locked, but through the window she caught a glimpse of her mother lying full of blood in the living room floor. So you can just imagine. The police immediately began investigating the murder intensively so that as to know what happened, what was the motive. Nobody can just get killed and no motive whatsoever. The chief suspected that it was a crippled colored man who had been seen in the area, because you must remember that before Susanna called and reported that Martinez was actually around, but she didn't have his name by then, so most probably she just said it's a colored. Remember the incident where the police came and they still said he must stay away from the area? In fact, it was because was that Martinez and Susanna insisted that Susanna insisted that her husband buy a dye pistol so that as to protect herself due to her seeing Martinez roaming around like in the area. At first, nobody considered that Marlene would be involved with this whole thing, and she may have hired as an assistant. And you can just imagine, with regards to what's his name, Mr. Van Gender, they were in love, so it wasn't going to be the first thing that he would think, but it probably was somewhat the back of his head that this is the situation. For the next week, the police efforts to establish and use Martinez's identity and whereabouts were proven fruitless. But around 7:30 a.m. on the 13th of November, that's when they actually had a breakthrough. Lieutenant Roland Boree of the Brixton Murder and Robbery Squad in Johannesburg went to see Marlene, who was staying at her uncle's house in Bryanston by and asked her to accompany him to Brixton. To accompany him in Brixton and police station, where he wished to ask her some questions with regards to the relationship and her relationship with Susanna. Lehnberg admitted on the way to the police that Van Linde was her lover. She added that she had been expecting the police to contact her ever since she first heard about the murder of Susanna from her mother, which was in Cape Town. Makes sense, doesn't it? When asked if she had an association with the colored man called Martinez, she denied the allegations. She said, never. I don't know anything about it. Berry also asked if she had once requested Robert Newman to give her a new pistol so that she could get rid of Susanna van Linde. Lehnberg admitted that she had, but that the request had been made in time, although Corey found no specific evidence that Marlene was with when the murder actually occurred. It did strike him that she seemed unnaturally nervous at the time of the interview. Why would you be nervous if you've got nothing to hide? While Corey was on the telephone to the Cape Town detective, Major Van Aswad began asking Lehnberg questions. She added, she suddenly blurted out that she took Martino to Susanna's house and waited for him outside and took him home afterwards. What did she just say? Lehnberg was arrested and formally charged with the murder of Susanna. Later that day, she made a full statement in which she admitted that she asked Martinez if she would do away with Susanna. In the statement, she claimed that she had waited in the car while her accomplice had committed the crime. And then, what's that? Martinez was formally charged with murder the following day. Um, the trial for Lehnberg and Martinez began at the Quaker Supreme Court on the 5th of March 1975. The trial drew hundreds of spectators who fought for seats in the packed courtroom. After hearing which lasted 7 days, during in which the state called more than 30 witnesses, and the judge, Justice Demon, and his two assistants, A.J. Van Meeker and F. Van Sale Smith, deliberated overnight, returned with the verdict of guilty of both accused. The court found no extenuating circumstances, and Lehnberg and Martinez were given were sentenced to death. This was before South Africa was liberated, and then the laws changed, and it was later transferred into a 20-year sentence. The appeal, she had to, of course, appeal this thing because she was never gonna be killed over this, although she knew very well what she did. 2 months later, the case was reopened on appeal. 15th of July 1975, the death sentence was set aside. Marlene was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and Chuku was sentenced to 15 years. However, Martinez was released in June 1986 and became a prince. How funny. While Lehnberg was paroled in December the same year, and Lehnberg ended her life in October 2015, 5 days before her 60th birthday. She had suffered from osteoporosis for years and also been diagnosed with breast cancer. Funny what life does to you. She could no longer take the severe pain that she was in and committed suicide, home, alone, and in a relative obscurity. Then, sadly, the preacher died in a car accident in 1992 on the N7 near Nuremberg in UK. The third member of the tragic triangle, which was Mr. Christian van Linde, died a lonely man in 1983 because he wanted his spirit public at all times, of which it was not possible. After the trial, he moved to Krugersdorp so that he could visit his wife's grave on her family farm in Magaliesberg. So he later regretted the whole affair and why it had to come to that. But unfortunately, the choices that we make in life lead us to such circumstances. She was buried in the mountains. He expressed remorse on ever having met Marlene Lehnberg. Of course, because you know what, we all want more than what we have, and eventually we end up getting more than what we wanted, and we cannot handle it. So yeah. After death, after the trial, a law known Marlene Lehnberg clause was passed in South Africa, preventing convicted criminals from profiting from their crimes, since it is believed that Lehnberg planned to sell her story to the press for a large sum of amount. So what would happen in UK is you would actually make a book, do interviews, or so that you can actually get money out of, especially if it's public and it's known and it's huge. So you can actually get profits out of it. But in South Africa, it's not allowed. It is prohibited due to Marlene Lehnberg's clause. So yeah, that's the story. Keep safe and would love to see you in the next story. Take care.